We are back with another episode of Think Fast. And the topic we want to get to today is conspiracy theories. Basically, the question, should Christians engage conspiracy theories? Should they even consider them? Should they just completely ignore them altogether? Obviously, this is something that has been kind of on the forefront of people's minds with COVID in the last 2 years. Obviously, there was a lot of things that came out of that were at first labeled as conspiracy theories that has now kind of come out and we have seen wasn't so much a conspiracy theory, was actually true. And so again, there's a lot of people that would say we really just shouldn't even entertain conspiracy theories. That's just a bunch of crazy people. And there's other people that say, hey, yeah, we should. And so let's start there. Guys, let's start with the kind of the most obvious question. What is a conspiracy theory?
Jack, you want to take that one?
Well, it's a hard thing to discuss because classically it means things like the Kennedy assassination, the moon landing, questioning did that really happen, or did a small group of people get together and put together a plot,
Illuminati.
conspire. Yeah, the idea that people conspired to do something and cover it up, right? And there's a secret out there, right? Now it's a pejorative for doubting what we're told. That okay, so when I really don't want us to get like zapped from YouTube, so I'm going to use words very carefully. The virus a couple of years ago came out, and somebody said, "Boy, this sure looks like it came out of a lab rather than something natural." Well, you're a conspiracy theorist. There's a conspiracy here, and then it came out that that's true. Or there are a lot of things like that. It was called a conspiracy theory, essentially for questioning whether what we were being told is correct. And so there's this broad divide growing among Christians of those who would call other ones conspiracy theorists and those who are like, well, you call me that if you want, but I'm going to follow what I think is the narrative. And sometimes that goes too far, but other times it's proven right. And so I think the question we're really looking at here is, should we question narrative? Should we question the news? Should we question what we're told and what's going on in the culture, or kind of take it on face value?
Is it wrong to question narrative? No, of course not. I don't think anybody would say it's wrong. Then you say, is it wrong to be a conspiracy theorist? And people go, ooh, I don't know. In my opinion, it's the same thing as to the point you're getting at, Jack. And the interesting thing is, look at all of the conspiracies that have come through in the last few years. You got masks, a lot of.
Be careful.
Yeah,
There's certain words that will
that's
get.
true. Face coverings, we'll say.
No.
Yeah, either way, we're toast on this.
Stabs in the arm.
Stabs in the arm. That's right. With
And
being
I'm
injected.
we're being silly here, but there's literally
Leg-
YouTube,
It's a conspiracy. No, but legitimately, that's what
yeah,
they do. Is they have algorithms run through the words. Not good.
misinformation, deleting and stuff like that. Yeah.
Being confined to our own house. All of these things we were told would help. We were told the science backed it up. We were told that these things were good for us. It would stop the spread, right? Within 14 days, everybody heard that. Stop the spread. The interesting thing is, and maybe this is jumping the gun on it, but where are the apologies? You know how many people we got? Well, that's not loving your neighbor. Are you going to love your neighbor? And being a conspiracy theorist here, are you loving your neighbor by perpetuating the fact that this came out of a lab, that putting face coverings on really doesn't do hardly anything to stop the spread? Things like that. We were told that's not loving your neighbor, and how dare you, because people are dying over this. And we're saying, hold on, look at the facts of the situation. Now that the facts have come out, I'm still waiting for an apology here. And I think most people are still waiting for an apology from the other side going, we were off on that. But we were conspiracy theorists at first.
From all the people that basically said, you just got to do what you're told, right? This is what the news is saying. So you just got to do it. When you had people out there, a lot of people that were like, I really don't think that this is something that we should just blindly accept. And I'll get into briefly, and then we can get back to kind of the main thrust of this. But this has biblical ties when you're talking about, should you just blindly accept everything that your preacher tells you, or thing, if somebody has a sermon that they're giving, should you just blindly accept it, or should you actually consider and question? And obviously, we're not talking about questioning just for the sake of being a contrarian, right? Just for the sake of disagreeing, or just for the sake of, well, I'm just going to be different than everybody else. That's not what we're talking about. But when something comes at you that doesn't feel right, or doesn't sound right, doesn't seem right, there's nothing wrong with questioning. If your preacher says something that maybe lands a little bit close to the line, and you're thinking, I might need to investigate that a little bit, there's nothing wrong with questioning that. There's nothing wrong with questioning those things. Jesus said, be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. We are not to just be blindly accepting of everything somebody tells us, whether that be in a pulpit or whether that be in the CNN newsroom.
And
The
we're
Bereans were
using,
known. I
go
was just
ahead.
going to say the Bereans were known as noble people because they searched the scriptures to figure out if it was true. I'm not
Right.
saying the um I can't even use words like the virus. I'm not saying that that's Bible on the other side, so please don't mistake what I'm saying there. My point is it's okay to question. They were questioning things, trying to figure out what is truth here, and that's all we're trying to do is to determine the truth.
So we're using the virus a lot, right? Because it's the one that kind of came to the forefront the last 2 years. But there's a lot of things like this, a lot of things that Christians push back against, and you're really told that, hey, ask, and we've got. I mean, you can go back. That's the nice thing about social media is it contains all these posts. There's one we were just talking about before we got on of Brad Harrod, Will's dad, posted a couple of years ago about, boy, this sure looks like it came out of a lab, and Christians blasting him for you're making the church look bad, brother. This is not okay. And yet he was telling the truth. He was right about that. I mean, this is just broadly accepted at this point. And so like the question is, should we accept things on face value or not? And it becomes a weaponized label, right?
Mhm.
Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, therefore you're one of the bad people. And I think that's one of the things that media does really well now on both sides of the aisle is get you to hate other people of a certain kind. Rather than engage ideas and ask questions and see what's right and what's wrong, rather than report facts, they're trying to stir up emotions. I saw a thing the other day. It was Senator Manchin voted against, I think, the climate change thing that they were trying to push through. And the headline on in the gym was Manchin versus the planet. I mean, like, if you can't see the narrative here, and so when you start questioning, like, is that really what it is, and you get told you're unloving for that, that's not okay. And so Christians really need to back off on each other and allow room for questions about, not use these terms. Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Don't don't get so caught up in that stuff.
Full disclosure here, we are very aware that we, as a podcast and as Think Fast, we ramble a little bit, and so what should be a Think Fast turns into a 20-minute dialogue. So we actually have a timer that we have set up, so we are under 3 minutes to go here. But guys, in these last 3 minutes, I want to ask you guys, what's the practical application here? What should Christians do? Because we're going to be told certain things by the news, we're going to be told certain things on social media. We don't want to just blindly accept everything, but at the same time, as I've already pointed out, we don't just want to be contrarians that are constantly looking for reasons to nitpick about certain things. So, practically speaking, what are Christians to do here?
That's a great question. I think you already said it first, Will. Be wise as serpents, innocent as doves. We want to be innocent in what we do. We want to use our judgment, good judgment. Things like flat Earth, things like QAnon. Um, we'll weigh into those. I'm not going to weigh in on theories other than to say there are things that are you can't just always accept what's widely accepted, but at the same time use your good judgment. Things like flat Earth. I mean, we've been taking photographs of the Earth for a long time. You have to go so far out a limb to prove otherwise or to show that that's not the case. And the other thing is, okay, some of these, what does it matter? So you're trying to convince everybody, what does it honestly matter? So I think those are the two of the principles are use your good judgment. And if you're a flat earther, I'll still fellowship you. I don't think you're going to
I
hell.
think I think your point is don't say that, don't be the kind of person who believes that everything I'm told is true. Don't be the kind of person who says nothing is true. Like
Right.
that there's
Right.
no mainstream knowledge is true. And why this matters, why we're talking about this as Christians is because there's this growing rift in the church, and I think literally the best way to define the lines is people who agree with CNN-ish mainstream media takes and those who don't. And you look at COVID was one of those. You had churches that aligned under the safety protocols and those things, and the churches that said we're going to do our own thing. You had the churches that aligned with the BLM and what was reported about that, and people who went the other direction. This stuff about Christian nationalism and whether Christians should engage in politics and vote for Christian values and leadership or whatever. You've got one side lining up over here, one side lining up over here, and this idea of conspiracy theorists is thrown about in all these things of whether you agree with what you're being told or not. And so this stuff really matters. I think, like I said, this is becoming the fault line in Christianity. I just read a book by Francis Schaeffer. It was written in 1981, and he was telling Christians at the time, you got to stop listening to the media. What they're telling you is not going to help you in your Christianity. And so I think that would be one of my biggest things is turn off the news. Ask, what does God think? Don't get so caught up in this stuff. Don't believe everything you're told. Don't go the other direction and believe nothing you're told. stay, man, it's hard, but don't be afraid of being called a conspiracy theorist either. And
Right.
don't use that as pejorative against your fellow Christians.
It's a personal judgment, and that's why we should not be drawing lines of fellowship or saying one's sinful or one's wrong. There's our timer.
Yep.
But it's a personal decision because I may align here, somebody else may in their personal decision align here. We can still both be brothers in Christ. Believing two different things, I'm not going to let that divide us. I think unity is more important than my conspiracy theories. I'm a big conspiracy theorist in a lot of things. That's okay. I'll fellowship those who aren't. But I think Jack's right. We just got to notice the rift that's taking place in the church and realize unity is really, really important, but stop using it as the pejorative to shame us who are conspiracy theorists.
And that's the biggest thing. That's what I was going to say. We'll wrap up here. But is that don't use these things to divide the church. Don't use. We referenced Ephesians 4, I think in previous episodes, but there in verse 3 talks about we bear with one another in love, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace. Man, don't let your opinions on XYZ divide the church in that way. But guys, about 30 seconds over our timer. So unless you have anything else, we will wrap right there with this episode of Think Fast.